Mangwana ni mwalelepo vukenjani klekwas dumelang vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the show that remains your portal into Africa's most potent stories. We are going to be joined by talent Gore as she delivers the Zimbabwe Report later in the show. But prior to that, these are the stories from broader Africa. Ebola spreads across eastern Congo. Museveni signs Uganda sovereignty law despite criticism. Kenya transport strike sparks chaos over rising fuel costs. Ghana mining reforms trigger concern over investor confidence. European Union extends Mozambique military mission for 6 months. And in news that has made a certain group of Africans very happy across the world, Arsenal defeated Burnley 1-0, just stepping an inch closer to their first title in 22 years. My name is Ashwin Berry. Top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises. From artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative Sport Tourism.
You're still with Africa Good Morning, and we continue with the Ebola update from Eastern Congo. Medical teams have been rushing to contain the new Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo after the late detection of cases and the rapid spread of infections alarmed health experts. The World Health Organization declared the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern following confirmation of 2 Ebola cases in Kampala, Uganda's capital. The outbreak is suspected to have killed around 80 people in recent weeks, while 8 laboratory-confirmed cases and 246 suspected infections have been reported in Ituri province. Another case was confirmed in Goma, the capital of North Kivu province, according to M23 rebels controlling the city. DRC Health Minister Samuel Roger Kamba arrived in Bunia with tents for treatment centers to support overstretched hospitals. WHO representative Anne Ansia said supplies from Kinshasa had been exhausted and more equipment was being flown from Kenya. The outbreak involves the Bundibugyo strain, which has no approved vaccine or therapeutics. Armed violence, distrust of responders, and declining donor funding have complicated containment efforts in Eastern Congo significantly. Now, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has signed into law a controversial measure aimed at limiting foreign influence after Parliament revised sections that had attracted criticism from financial institutions and development organizations. The new legislation criminalizes promoting the interests of a foreigner against the interests of Uganda and blocks individuals working on behalf of foreign interests from developing or implementing policy without government approval. Rights groups have argued that the broad wording could allow authorities to criminalize political opposition, while the government insists critics are exaggerating the law's impact. Museveni, who has ruled Uganda since 1986, has repeatedly accused domestic rivals of receiving foreign funding and interfering with national interests. His office announced the Protection of Sovereignty Bill adopted by Parliament on May 5 had officially been signed into law. Penalties include prison terms of up to 10 years and heavy financial fines. Amendments softened earlier proposals that required all Ugandans receiving foreign funds to register as foreign agents. The revised law now applies only to those receiving money for political purposes linked to advancing foreign interests within Uganda's political environment and governance structures nationwide. Now, protests over rising fuel prices erupted across Kenya just yesterday as a nationwide public transport strike stranded commuters and disrupted movement in Nairobi and several other towns. The Transport Sector Alliance announced that vehicles linked to its member associations would stop operating from midnight in protest against the latest fuel price increases, while police warned they would act against disruptions. Kenya's Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority last week raised retail fuel prices by as much as 23.5% after increasing them by 24.2% the previous month, citing supply pressures linked to the conflict in the Middle East. Roads into Nairobi were blocked by striking transport operators and protesters, while police used tear gas in some areas as demonstrators burned tires to block access routes. In Mombasa, fears grew over supply chain delays because of the strike action. Finance Minister John Mbadi said the Finance and Energy Ministries planned talks with transport operators to seek solutions, noting fuel prices were already subsidized. Kenya relies heavily on fuel imports from the Middle East through government-to-government agreements with Gulf suppliers. Rising transport fares and increasing food prices have intensified pressure on households already struggling with the high cost of living across the country. Now, Ghana's efforts to tighten the reins around its mining industry are raising fears among investors and global gold producers, with industry leaders warning that uncertainty surrounding mining leases could damage confidence in Africa's leading gold-producing nation. Concerns have grown following revoked leases, delayed renewals, and policy changes affecting foreign mining companies. Kenneth Ashigbe, chief executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines, warned that recent developments risk sending a message to international investors that security of tenure in Ghana is uncertain. The dispute centers on goldfields Tarkwa and Damang mines. Now, Tarkwa produced about 427,000 ounces of gold in 2025 and remains a major contributor to export earnings and state revenue. Anxiety increased after Ghana declined to renew the lease for Goldfields Damang mine before transferring control to local firm engineers and planners. The government says the strategy is intended to increase local participation and secure greater value from high global gold prices. Ghana has also proposed a sliding royalty regime and the removal of long-term stability agreements. Mining firms including Goldfields, Newmont, and Anglo Gold Ashanti have opposed the measures, warning that unpredictable policy changes could discourage future investment and weaken confidence in Ghana's mining sector over time. Now, the European Union has extended its military mission, and this is in Mozambique, for another 6 months, allowing troops to remain in the country until the end of the year as efforts continue to stabilize the insurgency-hit Cabo Delgado region. The European Union Military Assistance Mission in Mozambique, known as EU-MOZ, has completed 40 missions aimed at helping strengthen the Mozambican Defense Armed Forces. The EU Council announced the extension on May 14, saying it was necessary to continue capacity-building programs focused on quick reaction forces, logistics, maintenance, and operational sustainability. Since the transition to EU-MOM Mozambique in September 2024, approximately 1,200 Mozambican military personnel have received specialized training from the European Union. Those have been our top stories on Africa Good Morning. Shortly, we will be joined by talent Gore, who is in Harare, Zimbabwe, as she delivers the Zimbabwe Report. But prior to that, it's the weather. It's time for us to talk to our correspondent, Talent Gore, who is in Zimbabwe. Talent, wamkase.
Tamuka edukana mamkao, mamkase Afrika.
Tamuka hedu. Now, Talent, Zimbabwe has appointed its first female Chief Justice. Tell us more.
Yes, well, President Emmerson Mnangagwa appointed, and yesterday he swore in the first female Chief Justice in Zimbabwe, who is Chief Justice Elizabeth Gwaunza, and she is the country's new Chief Justice, ending retired Chief Justice Luke Malaba's tenure at midnight after 45 years on the bench. Chief Justice Gwaunza takes over as the head of the judiciary with effect from yesterday. She becomes the first female Chief Justice of Zimbabwe, and the announcement was announced just on Friday by the
All right, Talent seems to have frozen there. Let me do my best to dig into that story as we hope that we can reconnect. Now, Justice Elizabeth Gwaunza takes over as head of the judiciary in a historic milestone. Talent, I believe you're back. Please continue your story.
Yes, she will be deputized by Justice Paddington Gore, who was appointed Deputy Chief Justice. The appointments come as Justice Malaba exited office upon reaching 75 years old, in line with Section 186, subsection 1 of the Constitution, which sets the retirement age for judges unless extended. Yesterday, judges, lawyers, and state officials just last week gathered at the Constitutional Court for a special sitting held in Justice Malaba's honor as he closed a judicial career that began in the magistracy and ended at the apex court. Justice Malaba served as Chief Justice after rising through the ranks of the judiciary, presiding over constitutional cases and court reforms during his tenure. So right now we have a female President Emmerson Mnangagwa yesterday actually swore her as the first female Chief Justice of Zimbabwe. And speaking after the swearing in, she said Chief Justice Elizabeth said that she was happy that the president is recognizing the girl child, because right now you find out that yesterday at the swearing in, President Emmerson Mnangagwa said in the first the first female Chief Justice. He also swore in a female Auditor General, and among other females who took top ranks within the government and within the country. So she said that she was quite happy that President Emmerson Mnangagwa was actually recognizing the girl child and giving them positions of power in the country.
Now, Zimbabwe's former cabinet minister, after spending about a year in custody, has been freed. This is Walter Mzembe speaking just after his release. Of course, this is pending trial.
The prison, there's a community out there which obviously sympathizing with. I believe that maybe up to 50% of the people who are currently incarcerated could be people like me, who have to be given the opportunity to defend themselves or to be defended, and then the rule of law will naturally pass its own verdict on them. And the sooner we speed up court processes and make sure that people do not stay in remand for inordinate times, I think the better. That's where the justice and injustice lies. It lies in the state's ability to efficiently and diligently discharge a justice within prescribed timeframes. So as you would imagine, I spent 11 months, which is enough time to actually conceive and give birth. 9 months plus 2 months of breastfeeding that I spent in incarceration. But notwithstanding, I'm glad that the state is, in fact, the jury, the judge and the jury, they made the verdict that they've announced. I think it's the fairest thing. It was the fairest thing to do under the circumstances.
Well, former tourism and hospitality industry minister who was just speaking in that video, he was actually acquitted by the High Court on charges of criminal abuse of office linked to the donation of 4 public viewing screens. Muzembe had been in jail for 11 months. He was arrested last year in June when he came back to Zimbabwe from South Africa, where he had been since 2018 after after the late former President Robert Mugabe was ousted. Delivering judgment, Justice Benjamin Chikore ruled that the state had failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Muzembe committed the offense. The court held that accountability for government assets rests with the permanent secretary and not at the minister. Justice Chikore said the prosecution had also failed to establish that Muzembe had direct responsibility over the assets in question. Muzembe had been accused of unlawfully donating the public viewing screens during his tenure as tourism minister. However, the court found that the evidence presented by the state was insufficient to secure a conviction. Muzembe was arrested in 2018. He was firstly arrested in 2018, months after the ouster of the former late President Robert Mugabe's government in a coup. He insisted that the charges were politically motivated. The 62-year-old left the country the same year to seek treatment in South Africa and did not return until June last year, when he was arrested on outstanding arrest warrants and repeatedly denied jail. So as of now, he was acquitted. He was acquitted of those charges as the state failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that that he was responsible for the day-to-day runnings of the ministry. They were accusing him of donating screens which were used during the 2010 World Cup. Apparently, during that time, there were some screens which were bought by the government, which were being used for the screening of the World Cup in the country. So those screens were donated to churches like the UFIC, to PhD ministries, and so they were accusing him as the minister of donating those those screens. But apparently, the state, or rather Muzembe's team, were saying that that was not the responsibility of the minister, but rather that responsibility was handled or rested within the permanent secretary. So it was not Muzembe's fault that those screens were donated. So that is what the judge ruled. He said that the state could not prove beyond reasonable doubt that Muzembe was in fact responsible for donating those screens.
Now, as we know, talent, Ghana is Africa's top producer of gold, which is why it is fitting that Zimbabwe's relay team managed to get medals in that material.
Yes, Zimbabwe's men 4x400 meters relay team produced a commanding performance to claim the gold medal after outracing regional rivals Kenya and Morocco in a thrilling final. The Zimbabwean quota displayed speed, composure, and tactical brilliance to cross the finish line ahead of Kenya, who settled for silver, while Morocco completed the podium in third place with bronze. The triumph marks a major achievement for Zimbabwean athletics and underlines the country's growing strength in relay events on the continental stage. Team officials praised the athletes for their discipline, teamwork, and determination throughout the competition. They said that this is a proud moment for Zimbabwean athletics. The athletes executed the race plan perfectly and showed a fighting spirit. This was said by a team official after the victory. The victory also sparked celebrations amongst supporters and fellow athletes, with many describing the performance as one of Zimbabwe's finest relay displays in recent years. So we are quite happy as a country that Zimbabwe, the 4x400 team relay team managed to clinch a gold at the just ended athletics African athletics competitions which are held in Ghana recently. And right now we are just waiting for them to come back home, and they'll surely get a welcome they truly deserve as champions of Africa in terms of the 4x400 relay.
Brilliant, brilliant talent. Much to be proud of considering the performances in Botswana and in Ghana. Thank you very much for delivering the Zimbabwe Report.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
It's always good to have you on Africa. Good morning. DSTV 285, GOTV 25, oneup2.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. Those are the spaces that you can find us tomorrow. Rorisang Mohojwe joins us from Gaborone, Botswana, as she says Dumelang, with the latest news from there. And as always, we will be bringing you the top stories from Africa. My name is Ashwin Bedi. Here are the economic indicators, as we say, Swiraj Lakanaka.